So if I'm going to be doing a review of Earthbound, of course I got to hold up the freaking box that I own. I think that people that know the price of this thing think that this is probably pretty insane. I did not pay the price that you see on eBay and all that stuff. No worries there. I wouldn't be able to afford something like that. I got really lucky with that one, but that's a story for another day. Today, we're going to be talking about Earthbound, and it's a review. Review is such an easy buzzword on YouTube. For me, I just want to kind of roll my thoughts off with you, talk about the things that I think make Earthbound special to me. This game, in particular, for a long time, was probably my favorite game of all time, and only recently did I kind of come to a self-discovery that I think Chrono Trigger might actually be my favorite, but Earthbound is a very, very close second, and there's got to be a reason for that. There's thousands of video games I've played. Why is this one in particular so special? Is it nostalgia? No, I don't think so, because yes, there was an exposure to the game when I was younger, but I used to think the game was kind of crap, and I think a lot of people end up kind of thinking that it's kind of crap, but there's a reason why some people think it's kind of crap. It's because it's not the prettiest game of all time. I do argue that there are elements to it that we've kind of overlooked, and maybe not so much these days, as Earthbound is probably right where it needs to be at in terms of popularity. Some people praise it to high heaven, like myself. Other people say it's mid, and other people say it's still crap. But for me, what makes Earthbound special is it's got all the human emotions wrapped into one game, and that in itself is a good starting point. It's got humor. Lots and lots of humor. Any NPC you talk to generally has a good sense of humor about them, but not all the time. Sometimes the game takes away from the levity that it likes to throw out all the time, and other times it can be really disturbing. It can make you feel really unsettled, and it's kind of interesting that a game that's like, let me see here. I'm seriously not trying to show it off again. It's K through A, kids through adults, so pretty much like E for everyone back then. It's a game that's E for everyone, and yet I remember being disturbed by this game. A Nintendo game disturbed me that seemed really rosy on the surface. I love it for that, but not only that, there's just emotional moments too. There's moments where it makes you feel something. It makes you feel sadness. It makes you feel a sense of warmth. It's nice like that. Like, the game really does just kind of take you through all the great human emotions that we like to experience when we're enjoying media, and I do think that this game goes there. And the thing is that by contrast, especially with games of the same generation, it's kind of rare to have a game that does that accomplishes that. So many games try to either just be way too serious or way too funny or just way too macabre. But with Earthbound, there's like a blend. There's a nice red blend. If it was a wine, it would be a red blend. But not only that, I love, of course, the thing that lots of people talk about, the Americana that comes with this game, which is kind of funny because it's not technically just exclusively an Americana game. It does take you through exaggerated versions of many cultures. It starts you off in a pseudo-America, a pseudo-90s America, which makes this game cooler and cooler as it gets older because it becomes a time capsule for 90s America instead of just constantly being modern. Like, I think that there is sort of like a feel to this game that you kind of lose with future generations. And so if you ever wanted to kind of like slip into a slightly exaggerated version of 90s America, I say slightly, I mean, there's supernatural elements in this game, but you will get that here with Earthbound. It's sort of like a muddy like glass or viewing glass into what it was like back then. You know, kids walking around on the streets and all sorts of like events, like open flea markets and stuff. Arcades were a thing, and that's in this game. Things like that. It's nice to see those things. It kind of brings me, yes, a sense of nostalgia, not for Earthbound, but maybe for just my childhood and just remembering a time when things were a little bit simpler, right? So, although that's not really like you should pick up this game because this will allow you to feel this way. No, I think that maybe younger generations will get a different feeling than what I get from seeing O-Net and Tucson and Threed when it's not a shithole. But anyways, so there's that aspect. I also love just the adventure of it all. I do like the fact that you start off in like a mountaintop rural area, and then you make your way down to a little bit more of a lived-in city, something more like what I grew up in. And then there's like the metropolis, which is something I lived south of, and you could visit a place that's just sort of just way more advanced than where you started in the game. And you got deserts, you got resorts, you got mystical faraway lands, which I love the game for this. It makes places like Egypt or China seem like really different in the sense of like what you know about them through like TV shows and folk tales and stuff. Like this game sort of gives you that. It almost gives you like the American ignorance of other cultures and puts it into the game. It's kind of interesting in that way, and I really love that. And and again, there's supernatural elements, there's the aliens, there's time travel, there's there's just giant piles of vomit. Like, I love the creativity that this game has, is what I'm trying to say here. It definitely goes places that a lot of RPGs never do. I do think that just diluting the argument, or not even argument, but diluting the conversation to just saying that, like, oh, Earthbound is a modern RPG. There you go, done. We got the aesthetic out of the way, done and over with. Let's move on from this. No, I think that, like, Earthbound does so much more with its setting than people give it credit for, honestly. Whenever I stop and think about, like, man, what is something that's not being said amongst people, really? So things that I love about it also on a mechanical level, I do love the fact that there's 4 party members that follow you around at all times. They're not sucking into your body like some other RPGs, like Super Mario RPG, for example. I love that there's enemies on the field. There's no random battles. You have to engage with the enemies, and there's even a system that's put in place in terms of how to get back attacks or get back attacked. I think that's really good, especially for its time. And I've grown to appreciate the hypnotic backgrounds and the large sprites for the enemies. At the time, and I think many other people might agree with this, we would love to have seen like the traditional like Final Fantasy style combat where you can see your heroes and you can see the monsters, and even better if the monsters animate to some degree. But that's not what we got here. We had a Dragon Quest sort of inspired game, and that's what we got. And in my opinion, I do think that Earthbound is leagues above anything that Dragon Quest has ever accomplished. Sorry, Dragon Quest fans. I do love Dragon Quest. I have played most of the games now at this point, but going back, I still think that there's just a lot more going on with Earthbound. One of the things that I think that makes Earthbound also great is that there's a good blend of just unique scenarios and then also scenarios that are leading to an overarching plot. So like the game starts you off talking about Gygas and stuff, and then you have a goal and you're trying to accomplish this big goal, and you're learning more things about the big goal. And along the way, you find people that are supposed to help you with your big goal. And not only that, but there's just sometimes where the game sort of takes a deviation and literally says like, look, you're gonna have to deviate from your main quest to take care of this other thing before we can open up the path to your main quest again. And they're always really fun, unique scenarios. I love it for that. I love that every single time I play this game, I learn something new about it, whether it be a like cutscene that like triggers only if you do a certain thing that maybe I didn't do in a past playthrough, or talk to an NPC at a certain time during the game's development that changes their dialogue and says something fun and interesting that I never knew that they would have said. It really rewards you in that regard, and it really makes the world also feel much more lived in. It's so much better to go back to an NPC in Threed that has something more tangible to say based off of what you've done recently than something like another RPG which would say the same helpful dialogue to help you with your current quest during that current time when you first meet them, and they still say that all the way to the end of the game. I love that Earthbound evolves with the current time that the game is in. I just love how all of this comes together. It's not like I can just point at one thing with Earthbound. Yeah, I could point to the Americana aspect and be like, that's something that's really cool and unique about Earthbound. I really like that. But everything that I think about with Earthbound just kind of comes together and is more special than a lot of other games I've ever played. There seems to be a care and attention to so many aspects of this game that I just don't see elsewhere, including RPGs. Like, there are a scant few RPGs that I hold to such a high regard, and it's honestly, it's spoiled me a great deal. It makes it harder to try other RPGs because I'm constantly holding them to the same standard as what I thought of Chrono Trigger and Earthbound at the time. And that's really not fair, and I've gotten time to get over that. But that is just to say a huge testament to how good Earthbound holds up after all these years. Now, if you're a new player, is there aspects to this game that don't hold up well? Yeah. I'd say there is one aspect in particular. Sometimes it's hard to know where you're supposed to go. You meander a little bit. Though I will argue there is always a hint station somewhere where you can buy hints. But there's also difficulty ramp ups. And if you've played the game multiple times, you can prepare yourself very easily for these difficulty like spikes. Like, for example, one of the earliest ones I can remember is the sharks and trying to take down, what's his name? Yeah, it was Frank. Trying to take down Frank. Like, there's definitely, like, if you're not prepared to go into that battle, you're going to get stomped a couple times, and you're going to wonder what you're doing wrong. And on top of that, while this is happening, you're losing money because of all the money that you're holding on you because you're inexperienced. You don't know that you're supposed to put away the money so that you don't lose it and all that stuff. Or you don't realize the consequence so much until, like, you go to buy important equipment like a new bat or a new helmet or something. So I recognize that. So this is definitely like a game where it's like, if you become a fan after muscling through some of the harder aspects of it, you will have a much better time with it each subsequent playthrough. And I guess that's something that, like, I give another big credit to Earthbound for, is that it has very, very high replayability. And I say this because of the fact that, like what I said earlier, every single time I've ever played Earthbound, I've discovered something a little bit different, a little bit new. And it made the experience all the worth it, on top of just the fact that it's just a brilliant game. It has a lot to say at times when you don't think that it's going to be that smart or intelligent. It can be a bit surreal at times when you feel like it's so grounded. And then the game can just flip itself completely upside down, throw you in a situation that feels hopeless, and then suddenly you're saved. Like, you know, it's like by the goofiest means possible. I am referring to, by the way, bloops. Please put this on the screen. The Runaway 5, turning off the clanky robot. One of the hardest bosses in the game, but there was just a switch on the back of him. Dude, that's hilarious. I love it. It's so hard to, like, just do the game one time ever and then leave it alone for life. I've definitely found myself going back to it not year after year, but, like, definitely time after time, to the point where I've probably done like 7 playthroughs of the game now at this point. It's really good like that. So I don't think I have much else to say. I just wanted to kind of unload my personal thoughts on Earthbound, why I think it's great. Again, I love the cast of characters. I love the main heroes. I love the aesthetic of the game. One thing I never even mentioned was the music really grew on me over time. I love the melodic, like the very catchy melodic town themes like Onett, Tucson, Threed, Fourside, and Winters. Things like that, like those are really, really good. But it took me a lot of time to get used to the more ambiotic tracks, the stuff that's like just really like experimental, like some of the battle themes and stuff like that. But now as an adult, hearing so many themes just sort of like be iterative or like just copy one another, Earthbound's battle themes suddenly are like wholly unique, and it's sort of like, where did your brain go to come up with these themes? Like, they're so wildly different from anything I've ever heard since then, and over all these years. It's crazy. But yeah, you know, it's one of those things where it's like just one of the rarest instances of a game that just, in my opinion, almost has it all. And the only thing that could make this a perfect video game in my mind is a remake where you could like spin the camera around, go into battles, you can change the perspective of the battle, and like you can have your characters on the screen if you'd like, or you can do it in the first person if you like, or you do a hybrid of the two like some of the Dragon Quest games that we've seen in recent years, something like that. And on top of that, maybe just like instead of having the hint, like what do you call it, the hint booth or something like that, you can do some modern innovations in terms of like keeping the player on pace to where they need to go and what they need to do. That's like the only way I could see that this game could just end up being a perfect video game. Otherwise, it's as close in my mind as it gets, besides Chrono Trigger, which I will talk about some other day. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to my little ranty thoughts about Earthbound. Hope you appreciated this. There's no script here, by the way. I just went completely off the cuff with this. So I hope that in spite of that, you still enjoyed this. And I hope that you stick around for news and other little editorial type videos that I like to do. It's been a lot of fun. Hope you subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you, Bloops, for editing this video. Everybody else, take care.